everybody, it's Lauren with Behavior Education, and this is TC with Reach Out Reptiles. Today is Sunday, December 15th, 2019. Welcome to this edition of Super Dwarf Sundays. You're going to get to see in the following video some photos and video footage of TC from the last 2 weeks. Last weekend, December 7th and 8th, I was out of town at the Colorado Springs Repticon, where I was doing an educational booth, and I did a presentation each day on snake behavior training and enrichment. While TC did not go with me to the Repticon, I did take a couple of other snakes that did some community outreach at our educational booth, and one of the snakes, one of my Morelia bredli, helped me during the educational presentations that I did. Felt like that atmosphere would have been too much for TC, and although I've been doing quite a bit of handling with him lately, desensitization and habituation to strange people other than me, he is not a particularly shy snake, but he's also not a particularly outgoing one, and he's somewhere in the middle. So I felt like the atmosphere and all of the commotion at the Repticon would have been just too much for him at his young age. He was just born in June, remember, so he's about 6 months old. I just didn't feel like it was appropriate to take him. However, I did do quite a bit of handling with him over the last couple of weeks, and you will get to see some video and footage of that. Hi everybody, it's Lori with Behavior Education at Spirit Keeper Equine Sanctuary. This is an installment for our Super Dwarf Sunday series. I'm here with Tau Ceti, who got in trouble for the first time ever tonight, other than the one time when he escaped from his enclosure and we had to reinforce the doors. But today is Wednesday, December 4th, 2019. I am sick and losing my voice, so I apologize for that. Tau Ceti ate 2 days ago on the 2nd. I fed everyone in his snake room. So there are 15 snakes in Tau Ceti's room besides him, and they're all carpet pythons. And I was feeding all of them on December 2nd, and he was watching me feed everybody. And he got into ambush position at his enclosure door, hanging off one of his perches, just in perfect ambush position. And I thought, well, he's worked really hard ever since arriving here at target training and station training in the tubs. And so I'll just feed him in his enclosure tonight, and I won't require anything of him. And that went fine. I opened the door, I showed him his food. He struck, wrapped, ate it, actually very quickly, no problem. So now flash forward to tonight, it's 2 days later, and he's up in his enclosure moving around. He was actually in his water dish swimming, and I noticed his humidity hides were dry, so I opened the door to refresh his humidity hides, and he comes flying out, striking it like I'm gonna feed him again. I saw it coming, so I avoided. I mean, he didn't bite me, but I told him that was not acceptable. So I got him out of the enclosure, and he has been helping me with some chores now for about the last 20 minutes, and he's been fine. Obviously, once I got him out of the enclosure and he realized that he made a mistake and food wasn't coming, he's been his normal self. That'll probably be the last time I feed him in that manner for a while, as I don't want him to think that the cage door opens and he's going to get fed. I would much prefer that we continue with the target training, and there's a system to the feeding so that he recognizes that when he sees the target is when he's going to get fed, or when he's in his feeding bin, that's when he's going to get fed and not just when the door opens. But he's been perfectly well behaved since I've had him out, and he has helped me clean his waters, refill some other waters. He's been walking all over the house with me, and basically I've just been making sure that he's good to go, and that he knows I'm not food, and that this is not a feeding night. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Education at Spirit Keeper Equine Sanctuary. I'm here with Tau Ceti, and today is Wednesday, December 11th, 2019. And Tau Ceti's been out for a little while for some exercise out of his enclosure. Weighs 227 grams. And he is going to get fed tonight before I put him back. We haven't had any more incidents where he has struck at me at all, and that is because since we had the one incident, I've been making sure to take him out more frequently than normal and handling him a bit and carrying him around to different rooms of the house. And tonight I believe I'm going to feed him in the tub that we weigh him in. I just don't want him to get in the habit of getting into ambush position in his enclosure and then striking as soon as somebody opens the door. I do want to also mention, because I was recently a speaker at the Colorado Springs Repticon this past weekend, Saturday and Sunday, December 7th and 8th, and I discussed snake training, behavior, and enrichment, and it came up that somebody thought snakes couldn't be trained, and the statement was, I hate to tell you this, but snakes cannot be trained. I've lived with my snake for 17 years and I still don't trust him. And I got to thinking that maybe I've never explained, and I assume that people are watching that know something about animal training and animal behavior, and maybe I shouldn't assume that. I just want to make it very, very clear that training does not equal tameness or does not equal domestication. Training is done literally every single day with wild animals, in zoos, in sanctuaries, and even in conservation programs, wildlife conservation programs. Wild animals are most certainly trained and trainable, and that does not mean they're domesticated, and that does not mean they are tame. You can literally go to any zoo in the country that's accredited by the AZA and see animal training going on every day. Every time you see a keeper talk at a zoo, lots of times the keepers are talking to you or the audience, whoever's there for the keeper talk, about how they train the animals. And that could be lions, tigers, bears, hyenas, seals, snakes, Komodo dragons. Most wild animals in zoos are trained to do some sorts of husbandry behavior, voluntary behaviors like get on a scale, behaviors so that it's easier to feed them, and some training is just done for enrichment. And these are just some examples. So wild animals most certainly can be trained, and that does not mean that anyone would go into an enclosure with a hyena, free contact, and pet them or touch them. That is never done at a zoo. Actually, it's because we do trust those animals. We trust the hyena to be a hyena. We trust the sea lion to be a sea lion. We trust the bear to be a bear. And those are wild animals. They're not tame and they're not domesticated, and neither are our snakes. I just want to make it clear that snakes are a wild animal. Snakes can be trained, but they're not a domesticated animal. Domesticated animals would be dogs, cats, horses, goats, sheep, any of the domestic livestock that you see on farms, and some of the animals we keep as pets, but not all. And reptiles are one of those animals that are not domesticated, including snakes. Now, some snakes can be tamed. In other words, I'm handling TC and he's a pretty tame snake, but it doesn't mean he's not a wild animal. So I hope that clears things up for anybody who had any doubts or questions. That training, you can train a wild animal, you can train a domestic animal, and you can train animals in conservation programs without even a human being present. but through remote training, where you don't want the wild animal habituated to human presence, and so you conduct that training where the human's not even inside of the animal. So yes, snakes can be trained, wild animals can be trained, so can domestic animals. Some domestic animals aren't trained. I've met people whose dogs aren't trained. I just want to make it clear that training is completely separate from whether the animal is wild, tame, or domesticated. And if you have any questions about that, please feel free to email me at behavioreducationllc@gmail.com. TC is doing really well, but I trust him to be a snake. Even though TC is fairly tame, he's still a wild animal, and he is still going to have innate behaviors. He could bite me. He could coil around me. He could wrap me in a panic. He can do all those things that wild animals do, and I don't take it personally because I trust him to be what he is, which is a snake. But he is being trained. He's doing very well with this training. He's doing very well with his habituation to people, but he is still a wild animal. All right, well, let's feed TC and then put him back in his enclosure to chill out for a few days. In this training session, TC's food reward is being paired with the target. So as soon as TC looks at, tongue flicks at, or moves in the direction of the target, he gets the food reward as a reinforcer. And eventually we want TC to be able to follow that target wherever I place it and position himself where the target is. So thanks for watching. Until next time, everybody, please be kind. Love your animals, and we will see you soon for another edition of Super Dwarf Sundays.